Amidst declining revenue and foreign exchange earnings coupled with rising debt service payments amongst other challenges bedeviling the Nigerian economy, the International Monetary Fund has called on the federal government to maintain caution in its policy formulation to avoid leading the country's economy to the brink. The Washington-based lender in its latest report disclosed that the ability of the central bank to set monetary policy and control the economy in many times hinges on its independence. It maintains that monetizing excessive government debt needs to be stopped so as to reduce liquidity in the money market, which will drastically tame inflation, as well as enable them freely set interest rates and pursue their objectives independent of fiscal policies. Joining me via Zoom to look at this and other issues, he is the co-founder and chief executive officer of Budget Nigeria, Mr. Seun Onigbinde. It's good to have you on the show, Seun. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure having you too, Tolu. Thank you so much. Yes.
Great. The IMF is worried, just like every other person is worried. But first, what will be your reaction to IMF's view around our debt profile and continued skyrocketing inflation?
Yeah, I think those concerns are valid. In local or domestic actors have also mentioned that this is something that we're worried about. If you look at us, our debt to GDP, as easily stated, is within the decent corridor. I mean, we are less than 40% in that regard. The challenge is our debt servicing to revenues, which means our revenues is low. And our revenue is low, it cannot service debt significantly, and that will continue to be a major worry, because at the end of the day, you want a government that does not spend its entire earnings on just servicing public debt, because that means it has to continue to borrow to fulfill other obligations or continue to collect overdrafts from the CBN, which the current government has done beyond reasonable levels. So that's I think it's a valid concern. Inflation is also a challenge, because if you keep putting money that's not backed by assets, if you keep pumping that into the economy and it keeps chasing the USD component of things, then definitely you're going to also have inflation skyrocketing. We have not even removed fuel subsidy, and inflation is at 20% already, but I'm sure by then things like that begin to kick in, it might just be significantly higher. But we are not in the best of times. We have to understand the fiscal sense, but it looks like the election and has distracted us from also looking at the state of the economy and the state of things generally.
When we talk about CBN not helping with bailouts and not helping government with funds, many will say, where do you think government will turn to when the situation becomes that bad? Looking at the fallout of what we've had from COVID-19 to other challenges that we've faced, and some inbuilt or some issues even caused by ourselves as a country. So what impact do you think all of this would have, and where do you think government will turn to when there is nowhere to get money from?
So it's not a question of where they turn to or where they don't turn to. I mean, definitely it's still the last lender of resort, but you have to look at your economy, not just in the present. You have to look at it in the future. Why do you need a bailout? For states, if every time when oil prices are challenged, you have to shore up the revenues of states. It just means that most of these states are not productive engines. So in as much as you are fixing short-term liquidity challenges by helping them pay salaries, pay gratuities, you run government, or even just giving them refunds and calling them Paris Club refund and order, support them. And that's just it. The federal government or the CBN is not generating revenues to do this. They just created these vehicles or these frameworks to just support state government, necessary to get the economy rolling. But you also have to now start thinking long term. How do you make states more productive so that they are also not subject to this discord within the oil and gas market? So that's the question that what we have not done. I've not seen us bail out states to revitalize their industrial capacity. I've not seen us bail out states to be able to produce much more and to be able to build a strong export pipeline. So if we say we will take Plateau State and we're supporting Plateau State to be an engine for the horticulture and for the exotic fruit market like strawberries and whatever the temperate climate can provide, yes, that's kind of bailout the CBN should be doing. We're going to support another state to be a giant in cow and hide production, or we're going to support a state to revitalize its cotton market or its textile industry market. That's the kind of investment the CBN also put their mind, so even the federal government has to do. Those are the kind of things that we need to do, because if every time the only intervention we make to the state significantly is just about helping them run government and pay salaries, then we have to do this over and over every cycle, and that will keep ballooning public expenditure and especially ballooning public debts, as you see. Yeah.
In recent times, we've seen the central bank focus so much on empowering we can list all of the sectors: agricultural sector, Anchor Bora scheme. We've seen a lot of interest in the creative space. We've seen interest also in the pharmaceutical space. That's talking about the central bank. But many say, and this question I know it's come to you before now, do you think there is that proper handshake between the fiscal side and the monetary? Yes, I'm going to ask you because I want your views around that. Really, what do you think about that handshake? It seems the CBN is just doing all it needs to do, but there's no one is complimenting the efforts.
I think the CBN has gone beyond its remits, has gone beyond its.
Yes, I agree with you.
In the economy. You have the fiscal authorities and you have the monetary authorities. Well, the CBN over the years has been mandated, just by the political authorities, to combine both. And it just speaks to the fact that the public revenues, which should have been the major anchor for the fiscal authorities, is not significant to transform them. So everybody has now resorted to the CBN providing resources to be able to do these things. And I find the CBN even just directly in control of whatever fiscal direction and the monetary. For example, the issue of taxes, or this issue of restricting certain items from accessing the foreign exchange market. There has to be a big conversation about what are going to be the limits of the CBN. And those who were framers of the CBN Act had rules. They said you should not give more than 5% of the previous year revenue as support, as an overdraft support to the federal government. That rule was significant. And I think that was why the departure from the system. And this is like a door that has been opened. It's going to be very, very difficult to close, because the road to improving Nigerians' revenue, it's not an overnight job. It's not something we're going to flip the script and we're going to move from something from 8 trillion naira to 16 trillion naira. No, it would be patiently done. It will be gradually done, and it will be systematically done. And before that is properly done, I think the CBN will continue to be that cookie jar, if you allow me to use that word, that's been used by the political authorities to solve their own issues. Because look at us right now. Foreign markets we can no longer access because of the current crisis in Russia and Ukraine and the increase of exchange rates in the US. It means that foreign borrowing the cost of foreign borrowing has significantly increased. We see the challenges that Ghana is going through. So we can't just go and access Eurobond at 13-14%. We can't do that at this point. The only people we have options left are the multilaterals, like the World Bank and maybe AFDB, and those ones are much more targeted, focused about what exactly they would fund, which might not be in sync with what the federal government wants to do at that time. So domestic debt, we also have limits because we don't want to crowd out the system. So at the end of the day, CBN has become that last lender of resort, but there's an overbearing weight that has been put on the CBN to provide support to the federal government. And I think it's not sustainable, because at the end of the day, the list of things you want to have, the worst of this for people, for the international community to lose confidence in the capacity of the central bank. If that happens, then definitely everything is going to go down the hill. So right now the CBN says, okay, this is our exchange rate, our foreign reserves. And people believe that if it comes to a time that the foreign environment or the foreign partners or no longer believe that size of reserves, and definitely we're going to be a significant challenge. So there has to be a conversation around the fact that CBN authority or capabilities in encroaching into the fiscal space, there has to be a conversation, it has to be limited, and we have to make sure that we sit down and ask ourselves the hard questions about how do we really change Nigeria's revenue. There is no reasonable analysis to show that we should have a revenue to GDP of around 67%. But that's also a systematic question, because if you don't create wealth, if you don't build a productive economy, if you don't have enough people out of poverty that have into productive means and have jobs, then how do you tax How do you tax them? We have 1.3 million people in poverty, or multidimensional poverty, as MBS says. How do you effectively tax that segment? So it means that we have to first be a productive economy. We have to first generate wealth before we can tax it. But the other side is also, what are we generating? Like, we need to optimize it much more effective. And I don't think we're not doing that. Our tax architecture needs to rework. There's no reason why PAYE, CIT, or VAT, how we are distributing it, is optimal. Although it doesn't even create incentives across the entire chain. That has to be on the table. We have to strongly build a singular database of taxpayers. I mean, whatever we have that's going on, which is fragmented around the federal and the state level, some of that we have to be able to put everything into a strong dashboard so that we can see what everybody pays or what. I mean, either from a business owner perspective or an individual perspective. Then we also have to look at the capacities of the tax authorities. So until we're able to do things like this, we would just wish, to say we want to increase, we want to grow our revenue or grow our taxes, because whatever we think we can get from more, as long as the oil prices were $108 last year, they're around $76 to $78 today. There's no reason why they can't be $70 tomorrow. It just means that we have to sit up as a country and know that our way out of growing revenues is to also optimize taxation and also to grow wealth in the long term.
Taxation there, and that's the non-oil space. I want to stay with the non-oil space. And you talked about state governments not being as productive as expected. So if that is happening and the NEPC, that's the Nigerian Export Promotion Council, continues to come up with figures, are lately looking good, saying the non-oil space is doing so well, are we deliberate about improving proceeds from this natural resources we have aside crude oil?
When we say non-oil revenue is doing well, what size? What size? We're talking about revenue, oil revenue, non-oil revenues, or even when we say non-oil exports, we're still doing less than $5 billion non-oil export. So you have been export alone in Brazil is around $35 billion. So what are we doing? We're not there. We're not close at all to what we can do. The production capabilities of this country has to be properly harnessed. When you look at the state governor, and you say state governor has performed, what you hear is that he paid salaries, he paid gratuities, maybe he built a couple of roads, and maybe he built a couple of schools. You have not asked a state governor, how did you expand the production capability so that more people within the environment can have jobs? There's no reason why almost every state in this country is not connected to like a gas pipeline to really build a proper industry out of it. There is no reason why a state government is not championing that kind of conversation. There is no reason why state governments have not defined their own export market. What exactly do we want to export? Are we strong in cashew? Are we strong in sesame seed? Are we strong in cotton? Are we strong in flowers and things like that? Kenya has over almost $1 billion horticulture market, which serves Europe and the US. Can't we just even find a means to plug into that? Those are the questions that we have to do. And until we're able to ask those questions, where we plug the economy of an everyday Nigeria to the global space, we'll keep still having these challenges, that unemployment, poverty, and the things like that. That is the only way we can transform things significantly. So for me, when we talk about the oil, non-oil revenue or non-oil exports are growing, we have to situate that into a single context. It is still grossly inadequate. Yes, I see the progress. To move from 3.4 billion maybe to 4.8 billion, I see the progress. We also now have a record CIT that we have not seen in years. I see the progress. But when we pat ourselves in the back, we have to put that into right ratios and the right context. That is still not significant, considering the size of the country that we're talking about. Nigeria.
How do you think all of this will shape the overall outlook for an economy that is still, of course, there's still an election that has been postponed? That's the governorship and the House of Assembly elections, which will now hold on the 18th. We've had the presidential elections and a lot of expectations. So what's your take, and how do you think all of this developments, all of these issues we've identified, how does it shape the outlook of Nigeria's economy?
And so, politics is a different game, and we don't our sophistication to be able to dissect some of these issues. As a whole, as a country, it's still not there. So people might be looking at who do I elect as my state governor from a position of it is the turn of my geopolitical zone, it's the turn of our senatorial district, it's the turn of our tribe. Those might be the primordial in sentiments that might be deciding who becomes the next chief executive of a state. Some might be looking at it from the angle of he has paid his dues, so because of that, we should let him go. Some might be looking at we will have to align with the center, because we don't know whoever is winning at the center is who we want to be part of. This is where we have to understand that the next election in Nigeria is more important. And I have to be very honest with you, it's more important. Who leads your state is as equally as important as who is the president of the country. Let me not say more important, but as equally important. Because if you have 36, I'm 36 even in London, if you have 24 quality state governors in Nigeria, the entire economy will shift. The economy will, no matter what the federal government is doing, it might be sluggish or might be bureaucratic and convoluted, the economy will make a significant change. So getting a state governor who is committed, who you are setting as a track record, as a pedigree, as the documentation that shows commitment to growing a state economy and unleashing its productive engines, that has to be on the table. And someone who is also going to focus on building the human capital capacity of the state, invest in education, invest in healthcare. Those are things that has to be on the front burner. So for me, I love Nigerians look at the president and at the president. But if Nigeria is going to make a significant redirection of its economy, its subnational units have to be much more effective and efficient. It's something we have not paid enough attention to. We've heavily been on the side that we want to vote in the president. No, you just don't need to vote in the president. You need to have a quality National Assembly. You need to have quality state governors who are able to think out of the box and say, how do I build a production economy? And how do I build a workforce that has the capacity to be able to deliver that? So for me, it's something that Nigerians have to put at the back of their mind. Elections have been postponed. Maybe it gives us a little bit more time to introspect and think through, who exactly should lead us going forward. But we have to take this, like, this is really a serious business. I mean, from electing governors. Yeah.
It's a good way to live it. I must thank you, Sheon Onigbinde. Thank you always for your time on the show and for your intelligent contributions to our discussion. Sheon is a co-founder and CEO of Budget Nigeria. Thank you so much. Do enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Tolu. It's a pleasure being here today.